Welcome back to the channel everyone. So the Nioh free demo is currently available, and today's video I thought I'd make a beginner's guide. This video will cover some very basic information on the core mechanics of the game. If you're a new player or a veteran that's struggling to get into grips with the game and the core mechanics, hopefully this video will help you guys out. If you do enjoy the video, please give us a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more content, and let's get into the first tip. So, tip number 1, leveling stats. It looks overwhelming with all of the different stat attributes, but to be honest, it's a very simple process. Once you hover over a specific stat that you'd like to level up, you'll see in the bottom left that certain weapon icons have a coloured tint. This basically represents the scaling of the weapon. So for instance, if I were to level up Constitution, this would increase the spear damage more than other weapons. What I would recommend from a beginner's point of view, before you delve into all of that, simply play around with it, as what's great about this system compared to other games, if you feel like you've allocated your stats incorrectly, you do have the option to reset. Which is great, as you have unlimited freedom to play around with this menu, so don't stress too much when you're starting out. In the early game, just have fun with the leveling, play around with different weapons, and once you feel like you have a build that you're happy with, then come back to the shrine, reallocate your levels as you see fit to do so. The biggest change in Nioh 3 is a new mechanic called stance switching. I personally think this is a really good mechanic, so your character basically has two separate builds. You have the samurai stance or the ninja stance, and you can flow between these stances at will if you're exploring or in combat by simply pressing the right trigger to switch. The biggest tip I can give to you with stance switching is to simply use both stances, instead of just leaning towards one or the other. Both styles are very powerful and can offer different benefits depending on the situation that you're in. Ninja stance is great for evading attacks, getting behind the enemy to deal bonus damage, and it offers a range of fast-hitting weapons. On the other hand, you have the samurai stance. It's a little bit slower, but it hits harder. You have options like blocking and deflecting. Both styles offer far more than what I've already mentioned, but seeing as this is a beginner's guide, a more advanced guide for both styles will be required, so I'll keep it to the basics. So ultimately, to take away from this segment, don't put all your eggs into one basket with the style switching, become one with both, learn the ninja stance, learn the samurai stance, and you'll thank yourself later on down the line. So tip number 3 is gear sorting. If we head over to the gear customization menu, for me this really helped in the early game, and it's to simply sort your gear by level. By doing this, we can clearly choose the highest level gear possible for our character. It's easy to see as your gear will now be at the top of the menu, which makes life a lot easier, as in this game you're picking up tons of gear, so having the option to see the highest level weapons and gear at the top of every menu helps a ton. So this next tip is really beginner friendly, and it's to do with your armour. Once you start picking up armour and weapons, you may think to yourself there's just so many stats and attributes on just one piece of equipment, which can be very overwhelming for new players. So my guidance would be to focus on the general base defense, weight and toughness. They're 3 very basic but crucial stats on each piece of armour. If you're above 70% weight, your ki or stamina will drain much faster, so focusing on a decent weight load helps out. The higher level your base defense is on each individual piece of armour will help you in any encounter. In layman's terms, the higher the base defense stat, the less damage you will receive in combat. And finally, toughness is how much you will be getting staggered by enemies depending on which form of attack that they are using. The higher the toughness, the less you'll basically get staggered. Until the endgame where you're maxing out builds and maxing out stats, I'd focus on these 3 basic stats. So next up is a very important segment, and it's called burst breaking. It's a fundamental in Nioh, and it has been in previous games, so I cannot stress enough that in order to get better at Nioh, burst breaking an enemy is so important to winning in combat. To notice a burst break from an enemy, you will basically see a red aura or a halo, which indicates that the enemy will be dishing out a burst attack. The fundamental is very similar to parrying, so if done successfully, you will inflict heavy ki damage and life damage, as well as reducing your enemy's ki gauge. These attacks cannot be stopped initially in any other way, so learning this technique plays a vital part in defeating enemies. So, moving on to the next tip, we're going to be talking briefly about yokai pools or realms. Certain enemies in Nioh, specifically yokai, tend to drop pools on the ground when they're using certain abilities. This pool effectively is the only way a yokai can replenish their own ki. When you're standing inside the pool yourself, your ki replenishment is significantly lower, so you're at a disadvantage. The most effective way to dispel the pool is to use the samurai stance ki pulse. Simply use the ki pulse inside the pool and the playing field is equal. My advice is, if you can, make sure to be vigilant with this mechanic. It can practically make or break an encounter with a yokai. and significantly put the enemy or yourself at the front foot. If you're obviously not too keen on the key pulsing and you're kind of getting the gist of the basics of the game still, you can obviously dodge and you can lure the yokai out of its own pool. So moving on to tip number 7. So battle scrolls are effectively side missions like Nioh 1 and 2 had to offer. There's a menu on the shrine that shows you a list of battle scrolls that you have required, and in order to get more you simply progress through the main story. My tip is to simply don't forget them. The battle scrolls are a really efficient way to gain extra levels, obtain extra loot and Ritter, and weapons, which will aid you in your overall progress throughout the game. Leading on to the next tip is training missions. They're another important task you should look at when you get the time to do so. Once you've explored the game and you've finally defeated the first Crucible, you will actually be transported to the hub area. Make sure to have a look around, explore and talk to the NPCs. 2 of them in fact will actually give you your first set of training missions. Be sure to do these as they give you new rewards, skills, weapons and other bits and pieces to basically develop your character. Another important tip you'd want to consider is using your Spirit Force abilities. These are basically abilities that are connected to the current Guardian Spirit that you're using. They're very powerful attacks and they're pretty fun to use. The main tip I can advise you on is to basically use them to reduce the enemy's key gauge, especially yokai, and later on the spirit skill itself will even be able to help you counterburst a yokai's burst attack. Moving on to a feature returning from Nioh 1 is Living Weapon. So this basically replaces your yokai form from Nioh 2 and it lets you become very powerful. Once you activate this mode, you'll notice that a meter pops up instead of your health bar. During this time, you're basically invincible. Any form of attack that you use, including blocking, deflecting, or getting hit by an enemy, basically any action that you do will deplete the bar. A quick tip to recharge Living Weapon is to simply use Spirit Stones. Spirit Stones are crystal-like items that you'll pick up on your travels that give you various amounts of experience. You can either use them to gain the experience or the Amrita, or you can use them for tough encounters. My tip is that I commonly use this technique to finish bosses off. Once they're down to low health, I can guarantee a boss kill. If you're having a really tough time with a boss, being able to use Spirit Stones mid-fight to reuse Living Weapon can make all the difference. So let's move on now to Soul Cores and Omnyo magic. A basic rundown of this system is that when you kill a yokai or a Crucible Wraith or even a boss, they will drop a Soul Core. This particular Soul Core, whichever one you've picked up, can then be used to enhance your character. You can use the top slot for a Soul Core to summon a specific yokai to deal an attack, or multiple attacks. These can be extremely powerful attacks. Just a quick note on this, in order to use these yokai attacks, you will need to kill the boss variant or the Crucible Wraith variant of that specific yokai. And then the bottom slot for the Soul Cores basically grants you the ability to use Omnyo magic that is tied to that specific Soul Core. This system is insanely useful, as some of the abilities in the system are practically the best abilities in the game. My advice would be to just don't overwhelm yourself too much, as at a first glance it is quite a confusing system. It's a completely brand new system for the Nioh franchise, so just pick out which Soul Cores you think are cool and which ones work best for you. And finally, moving on to the final tip of the video is to just basically have fun and explore the game. Too many players nowadays rush straight into role-playing action games with no clear plan, completely bypassing core mechanics and fundamentals, and then they wonder why they're struggling. It's easy to fall into this trap. The beauty of the open world is that you're not necessarily gatekept at a certain area of the game. Simply taking your time, exploring the world map that Nioh has to offer and trying out various different playstyles will ultimately help you feel less overwhelmed. If you're struggling with a difficult enemy or a boss or anything of the like, try out a different build. Learn which weapons you like most and maybe travel somewhere else on the map until you feel that you're confident to go back and tackle it. Nioh is such a diverse and informative game. It basically has every tool available for you to tackle the game, to take advantage of everything that you can and can't do. So don't rush, take your time and enjoy. On that note, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has been informative and I hope that you can take some of these tips with you in game. If you'd like to see more guides like this for Nioh 3, just let me know in the comment section below. With that being said, take care everyone. I'll catch you on the next video.